Hello everyone, and welcome to another evening of streaming. What we're trying to do here is to capture Hero Forge to show what we're actually painting, but somehow that did not work, so let's just go in here. So, as I was trying to say... Oh, Miss Chameleon! That's a long time ago! Thank you for stopping by. How are things? Are you happy, enjoying life, still making Christmas cards? Good. Now, as I was saying, I'm painting up some minis for the Danish authors in the NaNoWriMo project, which I've mentioned endlessly. It's basically write a book in a month. And today we'll try to paint M from one of the Danish authors, as I said. So M is kind of a hacker, criminal, outcast kind of type in a... I'm envisioning some kind of cyberpunky setting, but I haven't read the story and the book. I just have a small blurb. But as you can see, she's sitting here on her crate with her laptop, computer, probably up to some nefarious scheme, hacking into whatever. So yeah, but anyway, good to see you again. So Nina Jane art. New name? Anyway, I have the blurb for M somewhere. And the author me, who may actually be joining us, has written that M is 21. She's a tech savvy and street smart, fending for herself all her life. She found a home with the crew as a teenager. Bad choices changed her course in life. Reunited with the crew, she soon settles in and jumps headfirst into their business. Seeing a lost boy held captive, she regrets nothing when she helps him escape. Never mind that Colin sees it in a whole different light. They end up being in bad standing with the crime boss, but M finds a way to destroy the man's empire, much to Colin's dismay. Can their newfound love survive their disagreements? So that's the introduction to M. So let's have a look at minis and stuff. So yeah. Nina Jane is good and happy. That's good. I'm happy, enjoying life. I haven't really worked for close to 6 months or so. Hey, Bill! Oh, Nina, you're getting back into streaming. I love that. Hey, me. Yeah, you make kids launches. I won't be speak much. That's fine. That's fine. You'll just see me absolutely mess up the paint job on M instead. So yeah. Oh, Nina, you've forgotten how to stream. Yeah, I mean, I picked it up a few weeks ago, and I don't think I've actually streamed since February or something like that. There's a whole mess with stuff, new work that wasn't very good. My dad passed away in April, and other things. So anyway, what I've also lined up here, because someone from time to time asks me about, why do you have so much paint? Like, this is just a little bit of it. You can see here. So someone often asks me, why do I have so many paints and blah blah blah. So just to give an example of what we're actually going to be using roughly, after looking at Hero Forge and the color scheme that me chose for M. This is roughly the paints I expect to use here on this paint job, which is more than just a few, and this is kind of exactly built. Paint is like dice, always room for more. So anyway, without further ado, let's move all of this out of the way. Well, let's move almost all of it out of the way, as it turns out. Oh, I'm sorry to hear about your loss, Nina. And yes, art is there to make us happy. That is definitely worth remembering. So anyway, back to M. 3D printed, primed her. Just a few glitches here and there because I did not do a proper job of removing all the supports. So we actually have a little bit of cleanup to do first. So I'll try and fix it. And fixing this is going to be a little bit cumbersome because fixing up a paintbrush job is never easy, because it's kind of like it goes on in a way that I can't do with brushes. Let's see, give it a go. So yeah. So anyway, what art are you up to these days, Nina? Remember the first time I saw you streaming, you just looked so happy doing your, I think with some Christmas cards somewhere, something along the lines of that. That just looked great. So we'll wait a bit with the base. And yeah, I still use the magnifying lamp. I do have some magnifying glasses as well. But this is gonna, even though I don't really show a lot of my face, I know, they're gonna take up the entire frame, so kind of trying to avoid them for now. Although they do work really well. So yeah, when I looked at the paint job here for M, kind of figured some of the things I'm gonna try is gonna be pushing me a little bit out of my comfort zone, which is always good, which is very, very fun to do, especially when you're doing art. I went a little bit into some of it last time when I actually did some blends of the Army Painter Speed Paint, to not just use sort of the factory colors, but actually fix up a little bit of that. And actually turned out way better than I had expected, so I'm kind of going for it again. So other things that's been on my table in the past week is the Christmas diorama I'm doing for my barber, where I've actually gotten to the point now where it's getting really close to me actually doing some of the diorama stuff. I've spent way too long getting sidetracked by programming the stuff. Just to give it a quick recap, it's basically going to be like a winter scene with Santa and Santa's little helpers, but of course, me being me, I had to go a little bit overboard, so it's going to be filled with blinking LEDs, small lights blinking all over, and yeah, it's going to be fun. But instead of just using an Arduino or something like that, I found out that I had some boards called ESP8266, which are actually small Wi-Fi modules originally. But I guess most of you know me by now well enough to know that if I get an idea, I kind of have to pursue it. So when I found out that I had something with Wi-Fi in it, I kind of had to make a small system that can actually update itself. So instead of just making something specifically for this diorama and making it blink like I wanted it, I wanted to make a full configurable thing, so I just have a number of output pins, and then I can turn them on and off, make them blink, blah blah blah. So I did a bunch of code for that, did a bunch of code for the automatic upgrading, having it contact a web service somewhere, the usual kind of stuff. And then doing an interface for actually setting different pins and so on. I got kind of a little bit sidetracked with that, but I wanted to get it done because all of the electronics for it, I have to put that in place before actually building the diorama, which means that until I knew that everything worked and knew that I could consistently control everything and it wouldn't get too warm, overheating, stuff like that, I kind of only had to work on that. I couldn't really build the diorama and then retroactively fit something underneath everything. So, but yesterday I finished up all of that. So now I can start building everything, which is good because I have to have it finished by not this Monday, but Monday after. So less than 2 weeks from now. So anyway, Ninja writes, I keep reading your name as Ninja, I'm sorry, but I kind of think like ninja art also sounds cool. So anyways, we're doing art full time around 2 years ago. It's a lot of digital work, way more than traditional. So my goal is to change that. That's why I want to start streaming again. All social media thing. Well, all social media thing basically has motivation to do more traditional art. I miss those days. Yeah, I get that. But anyway, I hope it's going great, and I don't think I have contact information on you other than here. But I'd love to see what you're working on. So please send me a message or catch me on Discord if you're still there or whatever. If not, I'll probably send you a message on Twitch soon. I hope that's okay. So yeah, where to begin? As always, I like to begin sort of at the inner layers of the inner areas of the mini, which means here the skin, and yes, I have cats, so way too many small hairs in the paint. That's fine, that's just extra texture for the hair, I can live with that. Cool, thank you. Anyway, skin. Now let's take, I have too much stuff on my work desk. Let's take another look at her skin, because she has fairly light skin. In general, the colors are kind of a little pastel-y. I mean, even the black paints are kind of more like a dusty charcoal. But since I played way too much Shadowrun role-playing game, the old role-playing game, which is kind of nitty-gritty, not really grimdark, but you know, getting there. Think something like Cyberpunk 2077 or what's it called, Blade Runner, that kind of modern sprawl metroplex kind of setting. So I kind of want to add that a little bit to the miniature. I tend to add some personal I don't know, touches, also because I can't always hit the exact colors that people use on Hero Forge. Not experienced enough in that with mix and paint. I can get pretty close most of the time, but not always. So I try to do this as best I can, and then I just fill in whatever feels appropriate. But we're gonna start with the skin and get that going. Oh, I've done a really bad job of cleaning up the mini. I'm sorry about that, me. So yeah, on to the painting. Now, on the topic of the Shadowrun role-playing game, I'm actually... Oh, and Nina asks, so I have a schedule. I try to get back into every Wednesday here at 7 Central European time. It's kind of the day that fits me best, with other things going on, and once per week seems to be roughly what I have the energy for these days. I have projects for streaming, I don't know, 10 hours per day or whatever. But hey, that's kind of because I always have a full backlog of minis to paint and books to read. So yeah. But now, as for the Shadowrun role-playing game, we're currently running a group that we restarted a few months back, and it's a continuation of a very old group from, I think, more than 15 years ago, almost 20 years, where after playing in Shadowrun for a while, we wanted to spice things up a little bit. I think most of us also kind of missing the what's it called, fantasy settings. And yeah, over the past year or so, I've gotten increasingly worse at speaking while painting, so please indulge me and be patient with my ramblings and sidetracks. But anyway, we've been playing that group a while back, and we wanted to spice it up a little bit. I was kind of running out of ideas to do with all the bad guys I'd made up for the group and so on. And we've been talking about, I think just me and one of the others was just chatting one day about how do we feel like to send these Shadowrunners who are not too far power-wise from Neo in the Matrix. And we talked about what would happen if we actually sent some of those people, and with real guns, modern technology and all that, what would happen if you sent that back into a fantasy setting? Could be Middle Earth, could be one of the D&D worlds, it could be Barsave from Earthdawn, or whatever, just playing around with the idea. And then I figured, hey, that would be fun. So we actually turned the group into what we've come to call the Portal Group. They got in touch with a dragon, with a serpent, who was looking for some artifacts that have been spread out across these different worlds. And they didn't know she was a dragon to begin with, but hey, I mean, that's how dragons roll. So she hired them to do a couple of jobs in the real world first. That went pretty well. So she sent them through a portal, and without really telling them where they were ending up, mostly because she didn't actually know where they were ending up, which I think is fair. I mean, if you don't know, how can you tell them? She of course also did not tell them that she didn't know where they were going, so there is that. But anyway, they went through it, and I can't even remember what the first world they went to was. I think it may have been either Warhammer, the old world, for those who know that, or maybe Barsave, from Earthdawn, but definitely a fantasy setting, because we wanted to kind of see the overpoweredness of it, but also see what would happen if when we had technology clash with magic. There is magic in Shadowrun, and it is pretty powerful, especially because you're not bogged down with silly things like spell slots. So Bill, if you're still listening, imagine a game where you can cast your spells as many times as you want during a day. And since any decent Shadowrunner has at least a couple of actions per turn, and the turn is 3 seconds, you can literally cast Fireball all day if you want to. I think I'm gonna make a one-shot for you, Bill, and the others in Shadowrun. Anywho, they come into this fantasy world. It's all fine and dandy, and they have a blast, being super awesome, uber powered, can't remember the order of the worlds they visited, but when they visited the Warhammer world, one of the first things that happened was they got involved in a small skirmish, battle, actually, outside a village somewhere, small town. So the setup is that our not quite heroes show up just as the army, the local human army, is getting ready to march out in front of the city, town, whatever, and down in the nearby forest they can hear sort of all the noise that an orc army makes, which is quite a lot. So since these guys could mostly pass for humans or at worst elves and an ogre, and yes, I do kind of mean ogre. They kind of agreed with the local captain or commander, what he was, that he should let them help them in this battle. And he's kind of going, sure, I mean, other people who wants to die for us, sure, not a problem. You kind of look weird, you have weird weapons and gear and stuff like that. I'm not entirely sure what's going on, but hey, I mean, you're pretty coherent, you don't smell of chaos or evil stuff, so let's go for it. And they do. So they set up, the army comes out, they have a contingency, whatever it's called, platoon of horsemen, they have crossbowmen, they have archers, they have cavalry, infantry, the whole shebang. Not really any sort of large war machines or anything like that, but it's a decent army. Maybe 100 people, probably more. So these 4 people basically annihilate about 200 orcs in something like 9 seconds. Very noisy, since one of them was using a heavy machine gun. But hey, pretty fast, pretty neat, pretty nasty, pretty convincing. So once they're done, I don't know, another few seconds of silence had passed. The commander just looks at his troops and goes, okay, guys, back to the city, I guess, or something like that. So that was definitely an example of how powerful characters like that is, but it kind of fit with the whole vibe we were trying to get, like in the Matrix, after Neo wakes up and when we realize it's just going back into computer simulation, all those things. And no, I don't mind giving spoilers to a movie that's 23 years old. But that completely insane overpoweredness of these guys when they are actually ready for what's coming, and just stand there, unload their magazines and clips, blast spells. Of course, they had Mike Hawkins, legendary mage by now, at least in our group. So yeah, they basically just brutally annihilated and slaughtered a whole warband of orcs in a few seconds, which was insanely fun. Later on, they found what they needed to find in this world, blah blah blah, went back home. Not a problem. Next world. Oh, another time they went out. They were not so lucky. The group, I could see that the players themselves got gave me some weird looks when in the very first game session we played. I let them find the thing they were looking for. I don't know, it was a jade dragon statue or a key or whatever it was that time. They found that within the first game session, just basically waltzed right in, looked at it, said, hey, we need this. No one was really around to do much about it, and just took it and left. Maybe a little bit of a skirmish or exchange or whatever. Nothing fancy, nothing serious, nothing that they gave them any kind of complication. So they go back, want to leave again. They know where the portal is, it's deep inside some cave. And yeah, they go back and take the walk in. The things start to shift a little bit, so they can feel they're kind of going to the in between area as usual, and they've by now realized that in this area there's a very annoying gargoyle sitting there, and in the past hasn't really been a problem. It's just kind of lightly chatting with them or whatever, nothing fancy, but this time just looks at Mike Hawkins, the mage, and goes, "Not you." So he's not allowed to come in. And the others, being good sports, decided to stick around and try to help Mike figure out what the hell was wrong and why he could not return to his own world. And I saw what you wrote, but I'll just finish up this story, because that was kind of what I really wanted them to do with this adventure, because this was set in Barsave, which is from the Earthdawn system. And one of the things Earthdawn has is horrors. And horrors like to prey on magicians who use magic without any kind of magical protection. There's a whole rule system for that, I'll not get into it. But basically, Mike was not aware of this. So he had just been casting spells without worrying about it, and naturally that drew the attention of a horror, which then did what's called a horror mark on him, and the gargoyle could sense that, and I did not give him any kind of chance to avoid this. That was basically what I wanted out of the adventure. And I knew he'd be casting spells, so that was kind of easy. And then they had a couple of weeks, how many game sessions of fun trying to figure out how the fuck everything works in this world, what the hell he's been infected by, how to get rid of it, and all the things they need to do, and favors they need to earn from local people to be able to get rid of the horror mark. But of course, in the end, it succeeded. Everyone's happy. Yeah, so that was kind of fun. And yeah, I just remember that first game session when they first were kind of like, wait, what was that? Was that it? I mean, because by now these guys have really geared up. I mean, they've got, I don't know how much ammunition, food, medicine, extra clothes, all the things they can imagine needing in a world where they don't know when they're coming back again. Because for all the power of the guns, they use it without ammunition. So anyway, Nina writes, I was never into D&D. If you remember, Alias, Sabias, and Eno, they're still playing over Discord. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I remember Sabias. Not sure about Eno, probably if I look back. But you've done quite a bit of art for their campaigns, and love that part about D&D, making the stories into something visible. Exactly. That's also one of the things I love about painting minis, so I totally get that. It's, for me, ever since I was a kid, I've always had this, urge. Seems so dramatic, I guess, but I guess it is. But basically this, let's just call it urge or desire to see things physically. For some reason I never got into painting or drawing. Not entirely sure why, other than being absolutely terrible at it, which I guess most people are when they begin, but I just never really learned how to practice those kind of things when I was a kid, which kind of annoys me today, but hey, it is what it is. But then when I found miniatures and learned how to paint them, that just opened up a whole new world for me. And of course, in the beginning, I didn't really realize it, because I was just painting it to get prettier minis for, I think it was Warhammer Fantasy Battle I started with. But when I started getting more into the role-playing aspect of role-playing games and not just the fighting parts, then it became so much more fun having miniatures for the heroes we were playing. So what I've done in the past, and well, not doing with the Shadowrun group because we don't really use miniatures, but even before we started using miniatures in our D&D, Warhammer, Earthdawn games, that's Warhammer roleplay, not the war games. Even before then, I would sometimes just find a mini in the shops that looked like the one I was playing, the character I was playing, and just paint it and bring it as a mascot or whatever, because I felt it to me, it made it more real and more. I got more into it when I had a painted miniature of the character I was playing. So yeah. And then over the last couple of years, we ran a D&D campaign where I would ask people to design the miniatures in Hero Forge, like Mia has done with this one. And then I just, whenever I had time and energy for it, I just printed them and painted them. That's turned into some pretty nice looking miniatures. And then of course, I think it was back in spring, I was a player in this group, which also gives me a little bit more time for doing prep work, since I don't have to prep an adventure for players when I'm not the game master. I can spend the time painting miniatures. And then one of the others, he actually got the reduce and enlarge spell, which I didn't really care too much about the reduce part, but the enlarge part is really good for especially combat situations. So I made a different pose for one of my, not one of my, I only had one character, for my tiefling paladin called Nobody. And then I printed him in scale 200% in all directions, which quite nicely fits in D&D with what's called a large creature, which is basically what you turn into after enlarge. Enlarge turns you into a large creature, kind of makes sense. And I know that's not exactly how it works, Bill. But anyway, I printed it in double size and it actually turned out wonderfully. And then this year for NaNoWriMo, I did the same with the miniatures, the authors last year, but I was just painting them in the small scale, a normal scale, where they are about this size. So about half as tall, essentially. But hey, it's a little tedious. My eyes aren't really getting better as I'm getting older. And I figured, since these are going to be display pieces, why not just print them a lot larger? And that's how we ended up with the one spinning up in the hopefully right corner, which is the one I spent the last 2 streams painting. So that's the magician Arcelot spinning over there. And what I realized, painting those, because my paladin is wearing full plate armor, which means that most of the miniature is basically just metal, and getting a good metal effect is super easy when painting minis. That's a really neat trick for it. It's fast and it looks good. So I hadn't really considered that painting about 8 times as much material is bound to take a lot longer. So I cannot finish these miniatures in about 2 hours. So it takes a bit more. So I'm not going to do a miniature per week. It's going to be, I think, 2 miniatures throughout the entire month. But hey, that is better than no miniatures. I don't think we'll be able to do it on such a small scale, but I'd like to try one day. I even want to sculpt them myself. I want to do everything when it comes to art. That is my problem. But Nina, that's not a problem. That is actually how it should be, because doing everything, you learn so many things and you try so many new techniques. A lot of them can be moved over into other things. If you saw the website before, Hero Forge, I know it is not sculpting in any way, since it's not like 3D editing in 3ds Max or Blender or whatever these tools are called these days. Time's a problem. No time for everything. Yeah, I get you on that. Exactly. It's but hey, no, but Hero Forge is actually a fun place to start if you're into that sort of thing, because you can, like what I do, you can get the digital files, and the digital files will let you work with them in 3D editing tools or bring them into whatever software you use. So you can work with them there, maybe add to them or whatever. I use them to throw them in the 3D printer and then print them, obviously. So yeah, so that's it's one place to start if you need miniatures. There are other similar sites. I've a few times tried learning how to use Blender, which is a full 3D modeling suite, and I did pretty well with low polygon stuff. It's kind of like the I'm old enough that I'm not really gonna be able to call it a retro vibe, but that's what a lot of people think it is. But it's kind of a very simplistic, stylized art style that I personally enjoy a lot because it makes it so much easier to see what happens when it's stylized. And I follow some tutorials by a guy, Swedish dude called Inventia, who's also game developer, does Blender, but was not when he started these tutorials. He was really good at using it, but I don't think he considers himself full 3D model artist or 3D modeler. I think I can say that without it being an insult to him, because he was good at what he did with the low polygon stuff, and he did these challenges, so not really tutorials but challenges, where he would say, okay, let's make some cars, and then he would only give himself 10 minutes and then just knock himself out, see how much he can get done in 10 minutes. And Yami says, Hero Forge is a fun place to create an image for your character and have some idea what they look like. Exactly. That's last year, that's kind of when I got this idea. It's also what I wanted to spread as an idea for those of us who cannot paint ourselves. Using some of the tools that exist. Of course, today you could probably ask some of the image AIs to design something for you, but there's the whole copyright issue and all that. But Hero Forge is specifically built for making characters for role-playing games. And I think that translates wonderfully into making them for the novels, stories we write as well. And in the years that I've used Hero Forge, they've just added so much new stuff, and they keep adding new stuff, like new races, new companions, new poses, stuff like that. So Me writes that her story is set in a more modern setting, but feel free to play around with coloring. And I see I might have forgotten to pick a color for the edge of the base. Yes, that was white. White is good if you want it. But if you want something else, just let me know. It'll be a while until I actually get to the base, so. One suggestion, and this is only a suggestion, is to just leave it black, because that gives a really strong highlight, outline. So whatever place you have for her, when you place it there, she'll actually stand out more. There's gonna be like if you see in cartoons, you have cell shading, where you have this really, I don't know if it's actually cell shading. I think part of cell shading is you have this ink outlines, really clear black line separating every single different part of the model. People like to use black for exactly that reason, because that way there's no doubt about where the background stops and the miniature begins. So that could work with black, okay, but what we'll do is we'll just start with black, and then I'll send you a photo and look next week on stream. And if you want a different color by then, we'll just give it a different color. yeah. No, but anyway, back to Shadowrun, because that's where it started, and then I got derailed by talking about the old group and all of that. So anyway, what we're doing now is we played in the D&D group, had a lot of fun in Greyhawk. It's the world setting for about a year and a half, almost 2 years, and then our DM, for work reasons, needed a bit of a break, which is absolutely fine. You always take care of yourself first. So we needed something else, and then we talked a little bit about it, and me and some of the others were all for not reviving the old group, because some of the characters were a little bit too powerful. So we decided to stick to the same background and our version of the Shadowrun world, which is Seattle in the near future, about 60 years out in the future. So we wanted all of that. We wanted the old group set up and some of the characters from there to be there as NPCs, but we didn't want to actually have actually play them because they were just too powerful. And that's as much as it may sound awesome to play really powerful characters, it usually gets either boring or extremely slow and sluggish to do all the rule things, because you have more things to choose from, more things to do. It's super difficult for game masters to balance everything because there's so many different options. So it can also be extremely deadly if you're not very careful and spend a lot of time balancing everything out. So we didn't really want that. So we just made some new characters. Well, I'm game mastering, so the others made new characters, and they got hired in by the company that the old group eventually founded, and then they're being sent out on missions from them. And after a few sort of initial missions in Seattle, so without going through portals, we just did a couple of those just to get people acquainted with the game. We had a new player who was both new to role-playing in general and had never ever even heard of Shadowrun before we mentioned it. So she needed to learn the rules and find her feet and stuff like that. So yeah, we did a few runs. As we call shadow runners, are people who run in the shadows. So we did a few runs, and then I sent them through a portal in a different way from the old, which I know at least one of them caught that there was something new going on here. And where they exited was on a spaceship somewhere. So basically they end up in the middle of a huge metal vessel. They have no idea what it is. And then until they eventually see some kind of window or whatever it's called on a spaceship, where they could look out at the stars and go, wait, where are we? So yeah, they transmogriffed or teleported or whatever to a different world out in the middle of space. And they've been having fun there ever since. Well, I've been having fun. I don't know about them. So the group has actually spent about 2 months there by now, trying to learn the local people, trying to hide a little bit who they are. The ship they ended up, the spaceship they ended up, was a military corvette. So that turned a little interesting in the beginning because there's almost people starting shooting at each other. Fortunately they didn't, so everything was fine. But anyway, I'm doing my usual, trying to mess with their heads and playing around with the way magic works, because I feel that magic is connected to living beings, and when you're on a space station far from any kind of inhabitable world, you don't really have a lot of magical power. There is definitely some from the people who are there, and they have some parks and gardens that gives a kind of artificial, not earth in the sense of the planet, but earth in the sense of dirt, growing things, so they have some kind of life force from there. But I wanted that to shine through and tell the magically active characters that there are issues with this. and that's going pretty well. I've also let them encounter what some people in the universe see as a deity, minor god of some kind, but no one really believes. It's very sort of science-oriented, non-magical society, so they don't really know much about, they don't really know anything about magic because it's not common use. It's not something like, oh, they know there's this weird old person somewhere who can curse you or something like that. There's nothing like that. It is somewhat inspired by the Expanse, the book series, that kind of nitty-gritty. People used to live on a planet. They can't anymore for unspecified reasons. Also, cheers everyone. Remember to hydrate. And yeah. So basically, that's where they are running around at the moment. They had, at least some of them had, a lot of fun going out on a spacewalk. They found a local dude to take them outside the station, just, you know, walking around, Mac boots, safety harnesses, you know, lined up, tied to the station, stuff like that, so they wouldn't really drift off into space. They didn't want to do that. The mage in the group had the weird experience of, at some point they got kind of, they bought the big tickets and the whole package, the whole tour. Hang on, is the camera way too bright? Because it kind of seems like it's almost impossible to see the details on her. Hang on. So do this, yeah. And do this. Maybe that. Sorry about the wobbly camera. I'm trying to adjust it by touching the touchscreen. Not sure if that's any better. There it is. All the wrong settings for all the wrong reasons. That's what happens when you don't stream in a really long time, and when you're more focused on what you're painting than actually looking up at the screen. So anyway, yeah, he was, so they got the big package. They're out, they're spacewalking, walking on the outside of the space station, which I would imagine would be an extremely terrifying concept. I would not consider myself what's called agoraphobic, but yeah, you know, suddenly realizing that one wrong move and you're just drifting off into space without any chance of getting back, because you can't really swim in space and so on. Yeah, I mean, I get goosebumps and my feet get all restless, and yeah, all those things kind of semi-anxiety just at the thought of doing that. But they got the big package, so they I mean, they just hired some local low-life goon whatever to take them out walking, and because he was, you know, they were paying handsomely for this, so he decided to let them actually drift out, still, you know, attached to a line, 2 lines actually. Oh yeah, you're gonna be like that too. I mean, with the camera when you're streaming. When do you stream? Just a side note. When do you stream? Because I really wanna see that. It's been a while. No, so they're just drifting off in the harnesses with 2 lines attached, and I'm thinking these are thin, strong lines, so they can get out at about 100 meters from the station. And when he's that far out in space, not on a station, which kind of counts as a place with life, not on a ship, which is also confined space with life, then his magic drained away. Oh, you're streaming tomorrow? I don't have any plans tomorrow. I will be seeing you then. I'll probably be painting, but I can paint and watch streams at the same time. Of course, if you're doing really exciting things, projects, it's probably not going to be a very pretty paint job, but hey, there's going to be more painting on M here. So anyway, base done. Should we start with the shirt or should we just continue? You know what, I think I'm actually going to do this differently from what I normally do. And I'm just gonna finish painting all of her ankles because apparently I cannot see. Oh, but it's super cool you're getting back into streaming. I look forward to that. And also, anyone watching here, I highly recommend. Is this the name you're streaming under? Nina Jane Art? Then I would highly recommend everyone to go watch her. Very, very talented. Set it up for Tuesdays and Thursdays. I have no idea what I'm gonna do tomorrow. Something easy to start with to try and remember how to do it. That sounds like a very proper and sensible way of doing it. I will definitely look forward to it. So anyway, let's okay, I should let it dry a little bit on before I continue with the skin, just to make sure it's fully dried. So let's put it there. We'll just really quickly do up the base in bronze as it is set, shown on. Okay, I will now stop. But why? You okay? I'll stop. I'll shut up. Anyway, me wanted some kind of bronze-ish finish in the top. And for now, we're just not doing the base white. We're just sticking with the black, but that's fine. So that means breaking out bronze, just giving it a quick dry brush that let the skin dry. Then we can continue on that afterwards. When you have paint that needs to dry, I actually like to have more than one project you can work on, so you don't either begin on different colors and either get sidetracked, which I often do, or risk painting in the wrong places and so on. So here basically what we're doing is just dry brushing, getting a nice bronze or tarnished metal. Guessing it's a steel plate that's really worn down. Which would have been another way of doing it, starting out by doing it as steel, and then giving it either brown, a wash, or some weathering effect, and so on. Yes, it is 8 o'clock here at night. Central European time zone. And if it wasn't clear from the fact that I'm doing this for the Danish participants in NaNoWriMo, I am sitting up in Denmark or down in Denmark, depending on where you are over. So yeah, okay, so it's 6 o'clock our time zone then tomorrow. Yeah, exactly. I mean, especially with time zones and when you're dealing with people who are streaming or online or at weird hours, you never know. I mean, I could be over in somewhere in the Americas doing this in the middle of the day. I could be, yeah, elsewhere. But yeah, I mean, people sometimes stream all the time, and some of the people I know over in the US and Canada stream. Sometimes I wake up to notifications that they went live at 1 a.m., 2 a.m. my time, so the middle of the night. Sometimes if I'm awake late in the night, I'll be able to catch them, but that is very rare. I've actually once caught one of them after when I woke up in the morning and just got out of bed, started waking up, just looked at my phone. There was a notification, and I was Kestrel 5. She's called on Twitch. Also fun to watch. But she was still active, still going at it, because I had to get up like at 6 or something like that. I think that's 8 hours times difference of at least 6 hours. So it wasn't even midnight for her when I got out. So that was kind of fun to have that in the morning. So does this look kind of bronzish, tarnished silver? I think what I'll do is I'll actually mix in a little bit of super quick thin highlights, not so much actual dry brushing, but just highlighting a little bit with a steel-ish color. If I can find it. Yeah. So just to get kind of a few places where it's. I'm actually going to do a very simple highlight with some silver or silver-ish, just to get a little bit of variation, and also to make it seem like some of the raised exactly. So just some of the raised parts, the cross hatches or whatever they're called. If you can get that, I figure if they're gonna be worn, they're not gonna be as weathered as the rest of the sort of lower parts of the plate here. That's kind of what I want to give it, just a little bit. And yet I know it is super difficult to see on camera, and I am going for a kind of a subtle effect here to make it seem like the bronze is more like a weathering effect. But it's there. So just a few of these cross hatches. I'm gonna call them cross hatches, and just make them a little bit highlighted. I'm mostly gonna go for the ones I already hit. What I found works really fine is just to dab your finger in the paint once it's settled just a little bit. Maybe painting one or two or just half one, then just dab it a little bit, because then you remove some of the paint but not all. And these surfaces here are not large enough that you'll actually see my fingerprints on them. It's just gonna give a little bit of texture, which I kind of like. But yeah. Do you use back or muted dark colors to make it look older? I do that sometimes while painting with dry brush. I'm curious, does it work here as well? It does. I mean, you can get what's called weathering effects, which I guess is just a fancy way of selling dark pigments. But usually what I do to make things look older, yeah, black, sorry, I should have guessed, yeah, yes, browns or blacks. There's actually, I kid you not, inks with really thin paints here. This one has sepia effect, kind of like with sepia pictures, old, what are they called, sort of browned out old photos that kind of faded. So just washing it in this, I can show this. Usually I have a very special miniature, an orc from somewhere, that I always do these weird effects on just to try them out. But we're gonna let Santa take the brunt here. Just to give you an idea of how it looks with the sepia ink. So Santa, you're gonna get a worn out. Now it's pretty thick when it comes on like this. But if you stretch it out, all of a sudden the white starts showing through. But since it's thinned down, and the way they do the medium for the suspending the pigments and all that, the way they do it with the inks, they're kind of aiming it at bringing it down into the recessed areas. I don't know how clear it is, but it kind of, I mean, this is a very overdone and very exaggerated way of doing it. But if you thin it down a little bit, let's see if we can do that. Just a little bit. I love having a bunch of miniatures I'm not really going to use for anything. Let's go nuts on his cap up here. I mean, see, nice red hat. And yeah, I figured you'd get the drift of this. So it's kind of in between a glaze and a shading. With the glaze in this case, meaning that it kind of takes a little bit of color from the ink, but not a lot. And since it's a brownish ink, wherever it settles in the recesses kind of looks like it's dirty. So yeah, no, that does not come through on camera at all, and we don't have enough light up here to show it. But this just makes it look a little bit more nitty-gritty. If you want to go all the way, there's also the dipping method of shading miniatures, which is super scary to work with once when you know how much time it takes to paint a mini. But basically you use what is perhaps most correctly called a resembles floor varnish. You know, the really heavy stuff that can actually survive you know, scratching it or moving your chairs all over it and stuff like that. But basically you paint the mini, just the base coat, no shading, no highlights. That's the base way of doing it. And then you just dunk the entire miniature into this can or jar of yeah. And yes, I did that with a couple of the minis last year. And it is so weird because it is so thick that it's kind of gooey and just slowly seeps down. You kind of have to clean up the bottom around the feet, stuff like that. But it takes so long to dry that it actually seeps all the way down and just leaving more and more pigments and paint as it goes down. And again, settling into the recesses because that's difficult to pull the pigments out of. And after it comes out, and you clean it up a little bit here and there if it pulls too much, but then it kind of just shades itself. But it will get that kind of grimdark, nitty-gritty look to it. And when it dries up, which takes at least overnight, preferably 24 hours, it is so annoyingly shiny that you really think that even though you can't see the colors, it's still kind of, you broke the miniature because, yeah, it doesn't look good. And then you give it some matte varnish, and then all the colors just pop up again, because the second you don't have the shininess of the varnish, you don't see the specular reflections. Yes, I used to do a ray trace and stuff like that, so I sometimes actually call things what they are, like specular reflections. So you don't see the sort of the shiny bright dots. When that stops, then you actually see the paint that is underneath the paint. Sorry, underneath the varnish, and then the miniature just pops up again. If you look somewhere on my YouTube, there's actually if you go to Twitch and look at my clips here on Twitch, there's actually a clip of me pulling out the miniature, and that was the first time I ever tried this technique. I've seen people do it in videos, I've heard about it, talked to people who did it, so kind of like, I know it's gonna work, but it's still very much one of the trust the process moments, where it's everything you're doing seems wrong, but you know it works, so just keep going. So yeah, look at my clips here on Twitch. There's one where I actually pull it up, and it was this poor little miniature was just covered in this gunk. I remember pulling him out, and I literally could not see any paint to begin with. I think I took the clip because at some point I just go, oh hey, I can see his face. That's a good sign. Hey, it's fun. I mean, that's the fun part about doing these things. Yes, I should do that, but I'm actually just called Skjelm on YouTube as well. So same name. And with the new way of doing it that YouTube introduced recently, you just do the YouTube / and then what's it called, an @ Skjelm. You know what? I'm gonna find that right away, and while I do, you can look at the one I painted over the last 2 sessions. That was again the wonderful Arcelot. I really want to call him Sir Arcelot, but I don't remember any Sir, so in the description. Anyway, I'm just gonna find the links for you. The videos of this from last year. Why can't I find this? Oh, here it is. Okay, so here is the... you found it already. Okay, so anyway, here's the video where I just have a presentation of the miniatures I painted last year for my NaNoWriMo. And 2 of them, I think one is called Gasty, and the other one is a guy standing with a huge hammer and an anvil. They're the ones I did the dipping thing on. And this reminds me to let you all know that the wonderful intro music I used, and also the background music for the video I just linked, is the track Secret Muse, made by my good friend Anders, who goes by the name of Chilean. And he made that about, well, clearly more than a year ago, because we were just talking about it, and he felt it sounded so fun with the streaming part and all that. And he's a musician by trade, music producer, I think is the correct term. And we just talked about it, and I asked if he could do some music for it. And I know it takes a long time, so I didn't really want to pressure him or anything. But we talked a little about the theme and atmosphere and stuff like that, and then he came up with this. I think it works well. And my description was that it's something that should continue building up to something, but never quite reaching it. So that's why he's kind of just building it up a little, building it up a little, taking it down a notch, building it up, adding some more instruments, taking it down a bit. So yeah, the background music we're hearing at the moment is, I'm gonna say as always, because it is, Adrian von Ziegler, very talented musician who's doing a lot of atmospheric music. He is, I really like the stuff he's doing, and if you buy his music on, I think he's on Bandcamp, then you can use it for streams like this. It's very clear. He's on YouTube as well, Adrian von Ziegler, with a C, the start, Ziegler. And yeah, I mean, his albums are usually themed. So the ones we're listening to now is from his Celtic collection. It's got a 1, 2, 3, maybe 4. I can't remember how many. But he also have more sinister music or anything like that. I also often use it for background music for role-playing sessions, board games, or anything like that. Yeah, go check him out. Leave him some likes. What do you, the minis? Well, thank you. I mean, last year it was so much fun and I had more energy. That's why there's so many back then, because after I painted one per week, I decided that there'd been so many entries. People would give a description of the character. I think I put a limit of 100 words, and then people would do it in Hero Forge. And I figured people had put in so much work that I just printed all of the minis. I didn't paint, fully paint. And then I just did the quick dry brush. Just painted them black and then dry brushed them with white to show the highlights, contours of the miniatures. Oh, and it's absolutely, yeah, isn't it? It's just the kind of music you can keep listening to for days. So yeah. Anyway, so that's another thing you forget when you haven't streamed in a really long time. You forget to switch the scenes back so people can see what you're doing. Yes, I really like it. Also, the simple dry brush effect is really good because it shows all the contours, all the sort of ridges on the miniature. And when you have them on a table, like when you're playing games or board games, role-playing games, whatever you have, the miniatures, they're about 28 millimeters tall. I think that's the scale these days. It's not super easy to see the details like small pouches in the belt or, whatever. But having the dry brush just makes those details show up more clearly. And I actually, I think it was last year as well, decided to take one night and take all the non-hero characters from a board game. It's one of the D&D board games, so not role-playing games, but board games. Dungeon of the Mad Mage. And it had about 35-ish or so miniatures. And I just decided to give them dry brush, to paint them black, dry brush them in different colors, so the different groups of monsters, all the bandits got the same color, all the goblins had the same color, all the skeletons had the same color, whatever. Can't even remember which monsters were there, but just making sure that all of them just got a colored dry brush on top of the black. to not paint them as characters or as actual minis, but still paint them as playing pieces. The dry brush made it much more visible, the details of the models, and the colors helped grouping them, so you could see who belonged together in the different groups, because that's kind of an important strategical aspect is a word we're looking for. Strategic aspect of the game is to see which monsters belong to the same group, and you can do that if you give them different colors. And I also wanted to show that it's possible to do it really quickly. So I took all of those models, did a single stream to see how long it took. It took 3 hours and 45 minutes, which is basically one night's work if you include a little bit of cleaning up effect. However, as some of you have noticed, I don't paint fast when I talk. So I'm guessing I could actually have done the entire game in maybe 3 hours, maybe a little bit less if I had not been talking. But anyway, that's still just shows that it is doable in a single night, single evening of painting. And dry brushing takes a little bit of getting used to, as all new techniques do. That's nothing new or nothing to worry too much about. But if you try just a few miniatures at first, you'll hopefully quickly get the hang of it. And after doing a project like that, you will become really good at doing dry brushing, and you'll become good at doing dry brushing really fast. And you will have a, in my opinion, fully painted game. Now the heroes I wanted to paint with a little bit more detail, so that took the usual 2 to 3 hours per model. But the rest of them, the monsters, they just look so much better on the game board now. And as a side note, the fun part about it was looking at my fingers. I often test dry brushing, I just test it out on my left hand. I'm right-handed, so just testing out on my index finger and thumb, just to see that it leaves the right amount of paint when you drag the dry brush across. But after more than 30 miniatures, I had very colorful hands, and it took not forever to clean off, but it did take a long time. Really happy I'm working with acrylic paints, because it really is just a matter of taking some hand sanitizer or the kind of alcohol-based thing that just eats away the acrylic paints immediately. So no big problem cleaning it up, but I mean, it still looked fun. It looked amazing. So yeah. For those of you who have board games with miniatures, I highly recommend doing it. I mean, it's get a black spray paint and a couple of, I would suggest, base colors, preferably maybe on the lighter side, to make sure that you can actually see it, because taking a black miniature and dry brushing it with a dark color, it will work, but it will still mostly look black. I can't actually, by the way, show those miniatures because the game is at one of my friend's place. That's where we played it last. So otherwise, I would love to pop a few miniatures on the rotating stand. But yeah. But anyway, that's the thing with the miniatures. We came from the dipping method and other ways of doing it quickly. There is a really good video by a guy named Duncan Rhodes, who used to be a painter for Games Workshop. he did a comparison of various fast ways of painting miniatures, and he compares slap chop to the dipping method, and I think a variation of slap chop as well. Slap chop is just, the short version is that you do the black priming, and then the white dry brush, and then you use contrast paints or speed paints, which are these really thick flowing, translucent transparent paints that again is really good at seeping into all the color or the recesses. An example of slap chopping is my Christmas tree I'm working on for the diorama, which was done just by taking it. You can see the white stuff, or the white dry brush still here on the ribbons and the small Christmas balls, and there's some bows, well, little ties, whatever. But if you look at the green, you can see that in the recessed areas, it's really dark because that's kind of almost black, so it gets a little bit of tint from the green speed paint. I think I used speed paint, not contrast for this. Different brands, doesn't same effect. But at the tips where there was a lot of white, you can see the full green color. Actually, because of the way it drags over the miniature, it actually gives some of the white shining through. So we kind of have this from really bright green down to actually fully black in the middle. So you get the shading more or less for free if you do the dry brushing. It's a way that it's a really good way. Again, if you're not doing display pieces or character models, but just want to paint all 40 infantry miniatures in a regiment, or 200 goblins in a fantasy dungeon crawler game, or whatever you're working on, then just doing the dry brush. I like doing it because I don't really have to think about it while I'm doing it. It pretty much does itself. And once you have just the bare training with dry brushing, it really just takes care of itself. And then you just generously slap on the speed paint, the contrast paint, and the miniature is painted. I think some people still consider it cheating, but it's a tool for painting miniatures faster. This whole idea that some things are techniques are cheating and some are not are kind of weird to me, because if people consider using a paint where the medium and the way the pigments are expended, if that is cheating, then it could be argued that it's cheating to use pre-blended paints. So you should really just begin with just the bare minimum would be the pigments and some kind of medium for spending them in, and then you should mix your own paint from that. And I think that's kind of just, you have to stop at some point. I know it's a bit of a sort of extreme example to go in the other direction, but I mean, it's just to emphasize that you have to draw the line somewhere. And I really don't think that the things like speed paint or the dipping method was also a little unpopular in some circles back when that came out. I don't know, 10 years ago, however long it was. But again, it's kind of just, it's something that lets you paint your miniatures faster so you can spend more time playing with them. I get the whole hobby aspect of playing games, and that's why I'm doing this. But at the same time, it's also kind of like, come on, we just, we're painting miniatures to play with them, not to spend all our time just fiddling around with the details. Anyway, cheers. Okay, so that was shading, that needs to dry. What can we paint while it dries? We can paint her pants. For the pants, we are going... Ooh, hang on, let us have a look. Because these pants here... I hate using a touchpad, that's why it's a little wobbly. I would say they are more green than they are black. So why don't we just go... Sorry, gray, not green. A little bit more green, gray. I'm even worse at speaking today than I normally am. Maybe, not sure if it's a valid excuse, but maybe it's because I actually went to the blood bank to donate blood earlier today. That always leaves me a little tired in the evening, but I would like to paint the hands, and let's just do a quick test actually. Again, this is where test models come into play. So we're just gonna test these two here. We have a sort of medium dark Gravelord Grey and a hopefully fully black Grim Black. So I'm just gonna see how that goes. I'm still learning the new Speed Paint 2.0 from Army Painter, so I'm not entirely sure how they look on miniatures. Oh, thank you. That's sweet of you to say, but I am kind of struggling. I used the wrong words and so on. I can feel when I'm tired, I can really feel that English is not my native language. But thank you. So, and again, these paints here, I'm not going to use a wet palette for them. I am going to use a fidget popper, as they're called, because they're really good, because you just let the paint dry in the popper once you're done. And then the next day, when it's dry, you can just pop them out. They're the ones, it's a silicone mold where you can pop out these things. And as you can see from the remnants here, not all of it comes out, but enough comes out that you can reuse the different areas. Or if you just take it to the sink and just wash it out, the rest comes off really easily. At least that's my experience. So Santa, you're gonna have your boots painted. I'll do the black one first. And now the trick with these is to actually pour them on, as I said before, generously. I've also thinned them down with some of the medium to make them thinner. Not surprisingly, that's why you thin things down. But that actually stretches it out a lot more. And boy, this is not very black. Maybe that's because this wasn't the black, but the gray. So let's do this one here. Let's see. Yeah. My bad. I started with the gray and now we have black. A little bit too much paint there. Now when black is thinned down, it actually does what we need it to do. And that's kind of the weird thing, or fun thing in many ways, to working with the speed paint, contrast paint kind of paints here, is that when you thin it down, not with white but with water, it's actually still going to give an even coat. Okay, this is really weird. Why are these being weird? Why is the black less black than the others? Probably because of the thinning, which is what I was trying to say. You spread the pigments over a larger area, so it gets more transparent, which means you see the white of the primer a lot more than if you just used it unthinned. And Nina says, yeah, I get that. It's related to, you know, English not being your first language sometimes. If I talk all day in my native language more than usual, it's a weird switch when I join Discord, for example. Same if I talk only in English for days, I struggle with my own language. I know that. I often, in Danish, I end up going, I don't know what I want to say, but I know how to say it in English. I know all the words I want to use and can't really find good Danish words to use instead. So I'm just gonna try the unthinned black to see how that goes on. Yeah, I think that's the one we want. Yeah, so the part of the trim on his coat. And what is, again, it's really difficult catching that on camera, unless maybe if I zoom in, yeah, if I zoom in, you can see it a little bit better. If you look at the trimming, it's still wet, hence the bright shine, but you can see how it gives some kind of texture, which follows the miniature. Thank you. Thank you for confirming. You can see it. And if you look at the boots, they're more kind of like white with the shading going on. So I think we're just going to use undiluted black on her pants. And also a really good tip if you do decide to play around with these kind of paints. I'm actually going to get a slightly bigger brush for this. Do not use your good, fancy, expensive brushes for this, because the entire purpose of this is to have the paint seep into recessed areas, which means that when you add them, use them with a brush, what happens is that it's actually gonna seep up all the way into the ferrule, which is not good for, it's gonna mess up your brushes. So find some cheap brushes, or at least brushes you're okay with getting worn faster than the other ones. This is why kind of switching between different brushes for the different types of paint. And another thing with these, as I've probably also mentioned in the past a lot, is that kind of only get one go at this. Because once it starts to settle and dry, it's gonna turn almost rubbery, so rubberish. So if you try to correct things a little bit, or go back and paint over, you're gonna get some really visible marks and patches, and yeah, it doesn't look good. So kind of like, I have to go at it a little fast, but the good news is that it is really good for spreading it out. I mean, it covers really well, as much as it should cover. So it's easy to work with, goes on easy. You don't have to sit around fiddle with all the details. It's gonna sort of settle on its own and fill out stuff. Oh, I did not plan this through, because the upper side of her thigh is super difficult to get to with the brush, but also super visible from outside. So yeah. So what I try to do is either find lines in the miniature where I can make a clean, I don't know, cut or whatever when painting, so I don't have to go back over something I already painted, or I try to move out in all directions at once, which is a little difficult. You have to do it quickly, but that way I keep working the paint out from my starting point, and that keeps it wet enough that I don't usually get these problems with patches, as I talked about. You have no expensive brushes. I'm gonna read the rest in a little bit because, as I just said, this kind of needs to be finished now. And this is kind of one of the funny things with this, to me. Having been used to meticulously making sure the paint goes only where it's supposed to go, the exception of washes maybe, the whole concept of just splashing paint on in a really thick layer and just watching it settle on its own is, it's a very different, also kind of difficult, but it's just a different way of painting that takes some getting used to. But it does dry up quite nicely. Yeah, and again, just to show with the brushes, see, this is my brush, and you see it still has a, it's still darker than when I started. It was kind of orange in the, but if I go in and kind of press the thing around the ferrule into it, I can see there's still a lot of paint left all the way up there, even though I have not fully dunked the brush. So you say no expensive brushes. Feel like whenever I get something expensive, I don't use it out of fear of ruining it. I can relate to that. Love the freedom to experiment and not feel guilty. Yes, and side note is that expensive brushes are by no means necessary to be good at painting. There's a really good miniature painter that I've mentioned a few times called Sam Lentz. He shows in so many videos that he's just using the cheapest dollar store brushes he can find, and then he just, I mean, they wear out quickly, but it doesn't matter. I mean, he doesn't have to worry too much about taking good care of it. I think he's the kind of person who actually takes good care of his brushes no matter what kind they are. But if something like this happens, or if he's experimenting with something, he doesn't have to worry about it because, hey, it's a cheap brush. You can just pick up a new one. So he'll literally buy them like a dozen at a time or something like that. I don't know, you know, go down and buy 5-10 brushes in one pack. But anyway, that's the pants done. And now the speed paints and contrasts, they need a lot longer to dry. And yes, I lick my brushes. It's I think apparently a lot of miniatures painters do, because they're small. It's really easier, a lot easier to get a nice tip on the brush if you just use your tongue. So another reason I'm happy I'm using acrylics and not like oil paints or something like that. So anyway, I think we will leave M for now, because I can feel that I'm losing my focus completely. And I will also finish in about 15 minutes anyway, so it is that time of night. I will say thank you for showing up. It's really great seeing you again, Nina. And thank you, Mia, for designing M. Let's tilt her a little bit. You can see her better, just not tilt her so much as she falls over. I will leave Em. I'll probably work a little bit on her over the week, but we'll see how it goes, and I'll be back next Wednesday to either continue on her or hopefully finish her. But we got some stuff done today, which is the purpose of these streams. It's basically just motivating me to get started and keeping momentum. So thank you for joining. Thank you for being a good audience as always. I look forward to seeing you again. And Nina, I'll see you again tomorrow when you stream. I look forward to that. For now, bye bye.